Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Desperado, or any number of movies that I would probably ill pronounce incorrectly because more than likely I probably will, and it'll happen. So, going into this one, how did I feel about Desperado? Well, honestly, for this movie, I would say that this movie for me doesn't feel like a complete story, but there's some ideas in here that I think are overwhelmingly just like, man, that's kind of cool. Oh, wait, that's a real cool scene. Oh, wait, like that's like a really like interesting way to like begin this story. And like so there's kind of bits and pieces of this movie that are kind of fun, but you also like I don't know how everything connects together in one nice, neat little bow. Like, I don't even understand why, like, we even have, in all honesty, like, Danny Trejo in this movie. Like, it just kind of feels like a random thing just kind of plopped in here. And Danny Trejo, I believe, plays, Navaja? I'm probably just going to call him Danny Trejo for this whole thing. Because I'm not even going to try to just trip over and step over the whole name of it. And I'm sure people be like, you said that incorrectly. It's actually pronounced this. And I'm like, okay, sure. Great. Because I have that coming to me. So I would say for a grading system, I reviewed some other movie, and I think like I forgot a lot of stuff. Like I forgot, hey, where can you watch this? And also like what grading system do I have? Because I guess I bizarrely have some grading system now. I don't know why, but I just do. So Desperados, like how do I feel about this movie? I would probably say that it's good enough, or it's like almost sliding into good territory, where, like, I think there's something about this movie that people will buy into. It's just kind of like you have to get through like this not quite seemingly complete story to get to those cool parts. And of course, you have a moment where both Salma Hayek and Antonio Banderas are going at it, and you can't really see anything all that well, but at least you could maybe hope that that's Salma, and hope that that's Antonio. Maybe, probably not. Doubles? Who knows? So, but yeah, like I would say that this movie is good enough. Like I would say that like this movie has like an idea that like if anything, if this is broken down as just like, hey, this has a really cool concept, but I wish they could have like went a lot of places with this in this one movie. Plus, also this movie to me kind of feels like the Tom Selleck movie, like Quigley, uh, Quigley with a Q. If anybody probably remembers that movie, it's kind of a much more Western kind of film with Tom Selleck. Man, I should probably review Mr. Baseball. I know people won't care, but like that Tom Selleck movie, Mr. Baseball, where he's in Japan and he's like trying to like he's basically an a-hole the whole movie, and then eventually people like some of the Japanese people are like, dude, I speak English, and he's like, oh crap. It's like, well, I guess I've been talking crap to people and they understood what exactly I was saying. It's like, yeah. So, but anyways, so let's go on into that. Like, I don't even know if I should get into spoilers. Like, this movie doesn't feel complete enough to even get into spoiler territory, or like teeing up territory, not spoiler territory. That's what I was going with. Teeing it up to really just say like, hey, what goes on in this film? Because it doesn't feel like like it feels like anything that I'm going to say in the teeing up part is just going to ruin the movie. So, really, we just have this ghost story in the very beginning of the movie. Like, I guess that can be a thing that sounds cryptic, and like we just have this one guy who's just kind of hopping from these bars killing everybody in sight just because, like, I guess people could be doing some shenanigans. So, or anybody who's just involved in this drug trade. So, really, this kind of comes full circle into having Antonio Banderas' character, who is El Mariachi, and of course, for people who are unaware of Spanish terms, El, of course, is the mariachi. But, anyways, what do I know? So, uh, so we have this guy who's hopping from bar to bar to kill all these drug cartel of the people, and eventually that leads us to eventually having the drug cartel finding out about this, and they're like, dude, we need to kill or take down this boogeyman, or this guy, this uh, whoever is taking out all of our men. And so that leads to having also a guy named Bucho, who is to bring in Danny Trejo's character to go and try to take out El Mariachi. I think I'm ill pronouncing that. Whatever. Anyways, probably it's mariachi or I'm pronouncing it the American way, mariachi, but I'm sure it's probably mariachi. But anyways, I apologize. So going into this, yeah, like I think that's pretty much covers most of the movie right there. It pretty much is like, hey guys, like, thanks for being here, because like I don't know how I'm gonna trickle this out more. So let's go into that double five time territory, because I think it's about that time to go into spoilers. This movie is good enough. It's like it has a decent concept. Like there's something about this that like I went into like Saints Row games, like Saints Row like 3 or 4, and like we have where like they went into doing these like guitar cases that ended up like shooting out weapons too, and I was like, man, that's like from like Desperados, and I was like, wow, like, and I thought like that's when I kind of like found like Saints Row like 3 and 4 to just be like fun games. Like, yeah, like it's kind of odd to just kind of randomly jump into like a third or fourth installment, but definitely check out Saints Row 3 if you are a video game person, because it's a really fun movie with a bunch of random stuff in it. You can kind of create any random person that you want. So with that said, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I get to spoil this movie. So, very beginning of this movie, we have a guy named Buscemi, who basically that's the guy's actual name, is to just go into this bar and to drink probably the worst beer he's ever had in his life. And so we have this guy coming in and telling this ghost story about this man who is to come into a bar and just have this big, huge, massive gun, and is just like laying out everybody into the bar, and supposedly the bartender got the worst of it, and so this bartender, who of course like I know from Cheech and Chong, I'm like, oh my god, and freaking Nash Bridges, I was like, yeah, I love freaking Cheech Marin, like, yeah, Cheech Marin. Anyways, so eventually the bartender is mentions like, well, hey, like, why didn't you try to stop him, or like why didn't you do anything? And the guy was like, dude, I was frozen, like I was scared, like I wasn't gonna do anything, I wasn't gonna try to die. So the mariachi goes and just blasts through all these people, kills all of them, and then heads out of the bar. And so like Buscemi is to tell these people consistently, it's like, yeah, like, but hey, these guys aren't half as bad as the people in your establishment, I'm sure. Like, they were real a-holes and all kinds of stuff. And how, like, this is probably the best beer that I've had, and I've had some. I've had a few. But so the bartender is to hand this guy a drink after getting a cleaner mug. And so the bartender says, "Hey, I'll give you a free drink if you describe him to me." And Buscemi is like, "Well, you know what? Like, that's great and all, but I think I better head out because honestly, I think that this mariachi character, whoever he ends up saying it was, like, I think he's heading your way." So that kind of leads the guy to just go out. So because eventually we end up finding out that there's to be Quentin Tarantino, who is the pickup guy, who is to go with some other man that ends up getting shot right away because I guess his papers didn't clear out. So Quentin Tarantino ends up going to this same bar to go and pick up some drugs. It seems like there is some uh, drug trafficking going on here where it seems that this kid is to have these drugs in his guitar. I guess that's how they're kind of like passing it around in guitars and whatever that they can, supposedly. So Quentin Tarantino is to head into this bar and he's to have this pretty funny joke. And like, I'm not quite sure, like, I guess there was just like this biding of time. I don't know what was going on here. Like, Quentin maybe was just like, well, maybe this joke will make the cut, maybe it won't. I don't know. So they're just kind of waiting for like Quentin's papers to clear for him to get the drugs that are bizarrely in behind one of these bathroom stalls. They have this secret door behind this bathroom stall, and immediately once I saw this, I'm like, this reminds me of like Blade the series, where all of a sudden there's this one episode towards the tail end of the season where there's this one creepy guy that is to like in this bar have this secret door to eventually go to this one hidden place of his. But anyways, so back to the story. So Quentin has this joke about this bar. So this guy is to go. This joke is to go into that this guy went and bet the bartender $300 that he could pee in some cup and not spill one drop. And the bartender was like, okay, like, I know that's not going to be able to happen. And so the bartender's like, okay, I'll take you on that bet of like $300. So the guy goes and just whips it out, and all of a sudden is instead of actually just like he's like, hey, cup, B stream, like I think I can just. But then all of a sudden we just have this guy wildly just peeing everywhere, just peeing all over the bar, peeing freaking by the cups and anywhere that wasn't the actual cup. This guy is just peeing everywhere, just willy-nilly peeing everywhere. So eventually the guy is finished peeing and he sits down, and so all of a sudden the bartender is so happy because he's like, hey man, like, I won my $300, pay up. And so the guy goes to these other men and then comes back with the bartender's $300. And the bartender is like, well, hey, like, why did you go over there to those pool guys and then come back here? And so the guy mentions that, well, I had bet those guys $500 a piece that I can go into this bar, pee all over the place, and if anything, like you'll even like the bartender at the end of all this will even be happy about it that I peed all over the place, and so like the bartender is just like, God, this is such a stupid joke. But if anything, like I'm sure maybe somebody had a good laugh at it. I don't know, but so Quentin's character goes back to get his drugs and then leaves. So eventually, this leads us to eventually, of course, have a scene where Antonio Banderas' character is playing guitar with a number of guys, and so. But eventually, it leads us to have the El Mariachi making it to the bar, killing all these people off, and I think he ends up getting everybody but one guy. And so, because that one guy is in the secret room. So, like, we have this really cool spot where Mariachi is making it to the, or Antonio's character is making it to the bar. And so, like, supposedly Buscemi had mentioned that this killer had a guitar case. And so now this bartender is like, hey, you have a guitar case? What's in the guitar case? And so he's like, hey, man, like, go and check it out. So one guy opens it and just sees a guitar there. And the bartender is like, well, hey, wow, thank God. Because if anything, like we were told before, that some guy, like, was killing people with some guitar case. And the guy was like, well, like, that's definitely not me. All of a sudden, the guitar case and the guitar hidden piece all of a sudden opens, and you just see all these guns and whatever. And so that's when we start to get, like, Antonio starting to beat people up, and eventually, like, just starting to scramble to get people's guns. And eventually, we have, like, these two last people that are just kind of, like, grabbing for whatever gun that's left on the ground, and every single one of them are completely out of bullets. Every single one of them, to where Antonio just snaps the neck of this guy, and he just ends up shooting and killing everybody. It's a really cool scene. And so eventually, after killing everyone, Antonio makes his way out to all of a sudden have the one guy that was in the secret room go out to go after Antonio, and that just leads to eventually Antonio, like, basically getting, like, it seems like he consistently either gets shot in the arm or stabbed in the arm with something in this movie. And so we have Antonio, who ends up meeting Selma Hayek's character, who is Carolina or Carolina. I'm hoping it's Carolina. It's probably Carolina, but Carolina. Let's go with Carolina and hope that that's great. So, Selma Hayek's character. Come on, people. So you should know better, right? No. Anyways, so what ends up happening is, like, Antonio ends up, like, bracing this girl and ends up getting shot in the arm, and so he ends up going and killing this other guy. But that only leads to eventually Danny Trejo's character going and wanting to, like, notice that he must be the guy that he's supposed to kill. And so we have Bucho, who ends up being this, like, drug cartel guy who's bizarrely calling people on his car phone, and bizarrely he doesn't know the number of his car phone, and so he ends up, like, shooting in the air and asking everybody, like, what's the number of my car phone? I don't know, what's the number, tell me. So, like, it just gets to the point where Bucho is to just want to just kill a lot of his henchmen because they're stupid, and he just gets really annoyed with them. So Like, there's this one spot where Bucho is to just be like, hey, man, like, if you see somebody that looks like a stranger to you, and it looks like they're probably holding a gun, like, you should probably go and just shoot them, right? Like, that seems to be the consensus, right? Where Bucho ends up just going and seeing a guy that he calls a stranger, but it's one of his henchmen. And he says, like, yeah, this guy, he looks like a stranger to me. He's holding a gun. Like, so I should probably shoot him, right? And then the henchman is like, "Hey, no, Bucho, don't kill me." And so freaking he ends up getting shot, and just to like prove a point that it's like, yeah, if this guy looks like a stranger to you, just shoot him. Just go ahead and just blow him up. Just go ahead and just kill him. So we have Antonio who ends up making a friend. That's some kid out in the middle of the street, or middle of the street, just off some in some street somewhere, just playing this guitar. And so Antonio is telling this kid to just play this one little song, and to just try to practice that over and over and over again. And Antonio will teach him something. And so but eventually, what ends up happening is Antonio meets this kid again to see that this kid is exchanging this guitar back and forth to, like, of course, have this guitar be laced with drugs. And so Antonio ends up killing the guys in the car, shooting them, and finding out that there's, like, drugs in that guitar. And so the kid is mentioning, like, well, hey, it's tough out here. Like, we all have to get by, like, frickin'. So this kid has to forcibly do this thing to eventually just try and like make money, so on and so forth. So, paraphrasing, of course. So what eventually ends up happening is Bucho ends up sending some guys out to try to kill Antonio's character. So what ends up happening is while Bujo sends his men out, uh, we have Danny Trejo who gets like caught in the crossfire, and so these guys end up just killing one another off while trying to get to Antonio's character. And so it's really just like, man, that just sucks. Like, Danny ends up just, like, getting freaking just shot up by all these guys while he's kind of knifing a bunch of these people. So, uh, what ends up happening is eventually Antonio and Carolina, and we end up finding out that Selma Hayek's character also has like this kissing relationship supposedly with Bucho, but I think it's just kind of like, hey, this guy like has money, and so like she's just being nice to him because he has money, and also he could probably kill her if he wanted to. So, uh, kind of like he probably controls everybody, right? Probably. Uh, so we end up eventually having Selma Hayek continuously having to like sew up Antonio's character, going and putting bandages and all kinds of crap all over him, mentioning how like if he wouldn't have moved, the scars would have been like or the god, what is it, the sewing up of his like cuts would be a little bit straighter, but it's whatever. So what ends up eventually happening is Antonio is to kind of hide in this shop while Carolina is talking to Bucho. So uh, eventually, like, Antonio is to like prep his gun, but he's not going to get a shot off here. So but eventually, this leads to both Antonio and Selma like having it out. They have this whole moment where it seems like you can see something, but then you can't. So it kind of sucks. So it's kind of like that one Antonio Banderas. No, I'm thinking. maybe I'm not thinking of the right movie. Yeah, I'm probably not. I'm probably it's probably not the right movie, so I'm gonna out of that because I was thinking of like a movie called Taking Lives, but I think that has like Angelina Jolie and Ethan Hawke. I think I don't know. Check out the movie Taking Lives, anyways. I don't know it's nothing like this movie. It's kind of a detective movie, but like for some reason I want to say like Antonio Banderas is in that movie, but he's not. But anyways, so or maybe I don't remember. It's a Taking Lives movie. Who cares? Whatever. Moving on. So eventually, Bucho is to go and have uh, the uh, the Danny Trejo guy just in front of him, just bloodied up and everything. And so he's to call his people to ask, like, hey, what is this hitman supposed to look like? And so they end up describing to him what he's supposed to look like over the phone. And it's like, yeah, that's that guy. Like, we just killed the hitman that was sent to help us. Like, what a stupid thing that was. We also had Antonio, who ends up getting some knives in his arm for his trouble when fighting Danny Trejo's character. So eventually, what ends up happening is after all this rigmarole, after all this troubles and whatever down in River City, uh, eventually, what ends up happening after all this chase around, after all this run around, because Antonio and Selma are in this bed, and Selma is singing this song. All of a sudden, we have these people like arriving from the background, and so Antonio is trying to figure out where to perfectly shoot, and like Selma's head is in that way. So Antonio knocks Selma off the bed to go and shoot these guys and kill them. But eventually, this only leads to Antonio's character forcibly, one way or the other, no matter how many roofs that he jumps with, and no matter how many guitar things that he flings, and eventually he ends up calling for his other mariachi brethren to eventually help him just take out these guys. Uh, eventually, and we have this really cool spot where all these three mariachis are together, and they're freaking like they're dropping freaking rockets out of their guitar cases and machine gun like freaking guitar cases. It's freaking sweet. Like that whole little scene there. But that just transitions us to eventually having Antonio's character confronted with Bucha. And so we end up finding out. Wait, also, here's the real cool thing. So Antonio's jacket, you see that it's black and it has this like scorpion in the back of it. Doesn't that look a lot like Ryan Gosling's Drive jacket? Like, doesn't it almost look the exact freaking same? Like, is that me? Like, I think it does look the exact freaking same. Like, so that I think that's a little cool, like, thing. Maybe, like, the people in Drive didn't even think about it. Uh, Maybe it was just like, hey, this is a really cool jacket. Because I'm sure, like, probably Ryan bought like a billion of them to never wear. Probably he probably has like one actually worn jacket, probably somewhere in his closet somewhere, but he's never gonna ever wear it. Because I'm like, hey man, drive, and it's like I'm just wearing the jacket, like whatever, man. So, anyways, so Antonio Banderas eventually meets Bucho, and so we end up finding out that that Antonio's character and Bucho's character are actually brothers. It's like, wow, so like Antonio was killing off every bit of everyone that works with Bucho. And so like but eventually all this just ends with Antonio shooting through Bucho and then I guess supposedly killing all of other of Bucho's men, because like after we basically just kill Bucho, it just like fades to whatever next scene of Antonio just talking to some kid in the hospital. And I'm just like, wait a minute, what? Like, what is this? What is this scene? And so, like, we just transitioned to eventually just having, like, Antonio just driving off into the sunset. Well, technically, he's, like, thumbing it through the sunset, but, like, eventually Selma is to pick him up, and so he ends up chucking the guitar case, and then they end up driving off, but then he ends up, like, going back for it. They, like, beep, beep, back up for it, and then he ends up picking it up, and he's like, hey, like, there's a lot of road between here and where we're going next, so, and then they drive off into the sunset. I'm like, wait a minute, so we don't have the big shootout moment? It's like, I guess we've just done enough? Like, whatever, Desperados, whatever. So, with that said, yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about this movie. I think I'm gonna get the heck out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.